master's program here at the University of Houston in 2023. Charles' work is influenced by a range of interests, including history, paleontology, philosophy, and psychology. These interests intersect with lived cultural experience in the United States and what feels like an ever-increasing dilemma of cultural stress and ideological tension. After defending his thesis, Charles looks forward to establishing artistic practice and presence here in Houston. Charles.
I apologize if my voice is a little shaky. I'm getting over a cold. The thinking behind my current artistic practice and these pieces is the idea that contemporary art practice is much more in line, or at least not unique from previous cultures. It is grounded in the idea that the only real experience we have in life is our own, and that beliefs and ideas we hold to be true are true, so long as one is not forced by some outside circumstance to reevaluate what they believe. I think this view or idea is particularly relevant to our current day and age. I've been told that I should expand on this in my writing, but I think for now, just about everybody probably knows what I'm talking about. Culture war, politics and stuff. Art or sculpture and art objects are the physical manifestation of ideology or beliefs. It is easier for us to take this view of cultures removed from us by time. It's easier for us to take this view. Something I've found really interesting for a long time, I think I heard in my early 20s, is the idea that we can't really experience something like a medieval cathedral the same way someone of the day and age could have, because we can never really hold their beliefs in the same way. I think the idea, though, or this way of thinking, sort of lacks imagination, and an unwillingness to try is an issue. Probably my highest ambition for the work is that it could upset in the viewer wherever it is that preconceptions rest, to make people realize that we can decide what we want to believe. I don't know whether or not this is actually true or possible, but I think it's worth trying. I think our culture is something to be seriously engaged with. And so too, art and the ideology it embodies. There's a convention of disposability pervasive in our culture, including just the fact that we have so much material accessibility, we can throw things away very easily, and I believe that this influences how we see ourselves, each other, and also our environment. I engage a lot with craft in my work. I see craft and material knowledge as a possible subversion to this kind of ideology of that's really kind of formed by consumerism and the ability to consume easily. I didn't go to this artist talk recently, but I heard about an artist talk where another crafts person talked about craft knowledge and knowledge of materiality makes the material plastic. And I believe that plasticity that's gained through knowledge can be applied to both ideology as well as the material world around us that we're so engaged with. Anything that's made by people can be changed by people. So these pieces that I've put up are about conventions, and they're about the engagement and experience of conventions. I think I could probably talk about the material choices in a lot of them, but I think beyond that, I think the one thing that's really present in all of the pieces is irony. The way that I see irony and kind of the use of the space and that these are in this space. I see irony as a rhetorical strategy. probably is my other favorite material. It's got its own conventions, history. It's a really great outlet if you like fire. Like all metal, it is infinitely recyclable. And through knowledge of the craft of steel, I think you gain a very strong sense of your own agency. Steelwork, traditionally like blacksmithing, is all about making your own tools and self-sufficiency and making things for other people. I think that's about as far as I've got. So, happy to take any questions.
To start off, I have a question. You mentioned about the use of irony in your work. Can you tell us a little bit about like specific instances for where irony showed up in your work?
Yeah, so I think point two is this balance. There's kind of an imagined violence to the piece, but the title of the piece and what the word that's carved onto the bark is persuader. So I think there's a lot of irony in that juxtaposition of holding two things at once. I think there is a lot of irony in the use of rebar to create these things. Or maybe that's not especially helpful. Yeah, I think that's just the easiest one to point to. But I could probably talk about it in each piece.
I think that's very helpful to like kind of bring in the titling of your work. That's also like an aspect of the kind of like the fullness of the work that you're doing, like not just the visual piece that we're seeing, but also the way that you consider it as like the conception of it through the titling and also the materials as well. Any audience questions for Charles?
Can you talk about this large piece in the middle? At least like where does the inspiration for the shape come from? Also, how is that painting stretched? Because I'm very confused.
The inspiration for the shape kind of comes from me trying to push the right angles. I think the inspiration of the shape just kind of really came from me just trying to make something interesting, or like going beyond the right angles. And then the way that it's stretched is you can actually see kind of the dimensions of the two canvases through where the weld kind of heats up. And
I didn't even realize there was two canvases.
yeah, there's a line down the middle. It's very difficult to do it that way. I think if I had done it again, I would have just made the stretcher from scratch instead of trying to use stretchers that I already have. What was the answer?
That was it.
Oh, okay.
Very cool.
Could you talk about how your work references like art history and monumentality within America?
Yeah, well, I think landscapes in America are very prominent in history. Like there's, I think there's kind of a transition from what's the name of the Great Lakes School? The Hudson River Valley School, where there are these initial kind of paintings of people coming to America and doing all these landscapes that are celebrations of what they see as like this kind of unclaimed wilderness. And that kind of reflects this kind of optimism and this like longing for something that's more pure and kind of away from the hedonism of Europe and these old things that they're trying to get away from. But then as history kind of progresses, the landscape gets reinterpreted as a tool in art for like the promotion of manifest destiny. There's a painting that even recently, I think, someone told me it was posted by representation of Columbia, and underneath in the landscape there's all these wagon trains heading west, and Native Americans fleeing from the encroachment of Western civilization, and that was, that's like used for their ideology, and that got reposted recently, which I thought was really, really interesting. And then steel, I think, like building things up with steel, like steel monuments are always like, there's this presence and this force to like a big steel thing, like the Eiffel Tower. And there's like a sort of a force to it, sort of a violence to it, sort of a permanence to it that I think is really interesting to engage with.
I know that language seems to be really important in the work. Like the 3 pieces of paintings, they each have different texts that are on them. And I know like the big one, it says like, how daringly the daring dare. I'm just interested in like that phrase specifically, and like how did you come to that one?
Yeah, I think it's another one of those things that's kind of ironic. I think putting that phrase up now kind of in, I don't think it's unfair to say that the past, maybe my kind of like foundation, like the first thing I think I remember in life is like 9/11. And then since then, the cultural kind of discussion, since I can remember, has always been this like, we're losing our freedoms, and this isn't right, and this goes against our like foundational documents and ideology. And to say like, how daringly the daring dare, I think to me is this kind of play with the cultural moment of like, and especially now as parts of the culture are kind of pulling away and really pushing towards going back to this idea that like, kind of might makes right, and like, what you can do is what matters. Like, these conventions are not real. Like, and so that phrase is both flippant. I kind of put it on there, for at least me, it's a little bit mournful. And it's just, it's again just kind of, to me at least, it's this expression and of the things I feel like was happening in the day and age, if that makes sense. It's a long-winded answer.
Not that you, I like the frustrations around the current state that we're in, essentially.
Yeah.
I think one thing about over there on the next to the landscape painting, it's kind of like reflection. Like what is it? How's that from?
Of the branch sheet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so that you can see yourself in it and read the statement above, how daringly the daring dare, and you can read the statement below that says agency. And it's supposed to function in the same way that like a spell or an incantation might function, that you can see yourself in this thing, read these things above and below, and see it in yourself, and hopefully like increase your own agency and ability to make decisions beyond your set of beliefs. It's how I imagine it working.
Like
Yeah.
sorry.
it's been kind of, maybe the reason I think it looks good is just because of what I see all the time, maybe. It's, it just keeps happening. But I mean, maybe it's one of those, maybe it's because maybe screens look like these.
Well, I was thinking about your comment about irony too, like the heavy steel, like hand-built things, hand painted, but then it's like a screen on the wall. That's sort of irony that I'm thinking, yeah.
It's a good question. I don't have an answer. For a bit of
We'll say that doing that changes it from just canvas with a landscape. They're beautiful, and they'd be beautiful just as landscapes, but putting it so it looks like a minor screen or the interesting shape here changes your whole